And there we go. So welcome to Ansible Security Automation and Sales. My name is Felicia Ward. I'm the Solutions Architect for Red Hat at Tech Data. Some of you may know me, others may not. Those of you who know me know I always like to start my presentations with a joke. So here is my joke for you. Two antennas met on a roof and fell in love. The ceremony wasn't much, but the reception was great. But tish. So why security automation? So let me tell you a little bit about what brought me interested in security automation. A couple years ago, I was watching this phenomenal presentation at the Red Hat Summit. And for those of you who don't know, Red Hat Summit is Red Hat's annual gathering where they get together all of their end users and all of their resellers, and everybody gets together for technical talks and sales talks. And really, it's this great jive of ideas going on in one of the local cities. This year it was virtual, but usually it's in a local thing, so you get person to person with all of your favorite folks. So I watched this presentation a couple years ago talking about self-healing infrastructure. And self-healing infrastructure is where your network knows how to take care of itself without you having to intervene. Excuse me. So what that means is that you take Ansible and you install it in your network with a playbook that says, if X, then Y. So if this happens, then we do this. And so as Ansible is monitoring your network, if it sees X condition, it deploys itself across the network and, fixes the situation. So this can prevent intrusions or unauthorized access. It can prevent, things from malicious code from taking place if it's installed properly. So there's lots of things that it can do. And this just blew my mind. And so I had to get to know more about security automation. So I thought to myself, well, let's find out more about Ansible. So of course, Ansible is great for lots of things. It's great for configuration management, continuous integration and delivery, orchestration, infrastructure provisioning. But one of the things that you never ever hear for some reason is that, man, I just solved my security issue using Ansible. Like that almost never happens. But in fact, Ansible is one of the most powerful security tools that you can have in your toolbox. As a little bit of a throwback to last week, I want you to consider this scenario. DevOps may be using Ansible to automate other things in your network, and the security comes to them and says, we found a problem. And of course, you all know that problems found by security mean downtime, complaints, other issues that may be going on. And of course, what if security came to you and said, you know what, we found a problem in our new software, but using Ansible, we built a playbook and deployed it and fixed the problem before you even had to worry about it. That's where it's so key to have a good Ansible playbook in your network. Now, this slide may be familiar to those of you who were at Marshall's presentation last week, but I want you to consider what we went over last week. Ansible can strengthen your security operations at every step of the security lifecycle. It eliminates the configuration errors or omissions by enforcing policy uniformity. So it makes everything the same. There's no special snowflake servers in your network. It empowers quick and secure data gathering during investigations, which we saw Marshall doing Snort to gather information on the intrusion that he was running during the demo last week. It also empowers analysts to trigger pre-approved steps when an incident is detected, which I mentioned before is the self-healing network. It enables you to push a button, deploy the playbook for the X scenario to get the Y solution to it. And then it has also automated collection of your evidence of the incident and full remediation. So it also has logs in place where you can also present that for your compliance issues. Look at this slide. Isn't it insane how many security products there are on the network, and so many of them overlap or do the same things? Or you might have a firewall in place from one company, and then you have a deep security in place from another company, and then you have backup from yet another company, and they all overlap with each other, but they all don't fix all of your problems. The average security team examines less than 5% of alerts every day, even with all of these security solutions in place. Of all the legitimate reports, only 51% are remediated. And without Ansible, it takes 57% more time to respond with a 65% increase in severity. So the short and short of all of those numbers is, without Ansible, it takes longer to respond. The threats increase in severity the longer it takes to respond. And of all the threats that are in your network, they're not even catching all of them. So I want to go over with you the stages of Ansible adoption here. So stage 1, opportunistic. This is where you use roles and playbooks that can be consumed immediately through Ansible Engine for a library of response workflows. Stage 2, Tower can integrate with multiple security with centralized access to a library and role-based access control. So those of you who don't know, Ansible is comprised of two pieces. It's Ansible Tower and Ansible Engine, which work together to make Ansible automation. Ansible Engine is what drives it, as the name implies, and Ansible Tower is the framework that pushes through. So you use these two things to put together your playbooks and push them across the network. I like to think of it as a giant copy machine that also does distributing. So I take my piece of paper, put it into my copy machine, hit copy, and not only does it copy it, but it also pushes it out to the next copy machine. And then we have stage 3, which is institutionalized, which means that it's throughout the entire institution that you're working with. So this is where automation and SOAR can leverage thousands of modules to create automated investigation and remediation plans. And you'll find a lot of these modules available to you in the Ansible communities, either on GitHub or on Ansible.com, in Ansible Galaxy. There's a lot of different places where the community is actively building these plans in order to come up with solutions to common security threats that we face every day. As we all know, cybercrime doesn't rest. So now let's move more into the salesy side of this. So first of all, we have our identity message. So your identity message is like your multi-purpose elevator pitch. Who are you? What do you do? How do you do it? How are you different? And of course, how do your customers benefit? So mine is that I'm Felicia. I work with Tech Data, which is an international technology corporation that strives to meet your customers' technology needs. What do? We meet you where you are. We take your technology needs and match it with our portfolio to bring together a complete solution for you. And how do? We do it with a bunch of technology consultants like myself who come in and suss out where you are and help put it together. So yours would be different, of course, but what you really want to do is craft this message and make it strong to your company and what your company does for its customers, because that is going to be the very big reason for your base. And I love visual puns, so bear with me here. There's more good stuff coming. So what I've got here for you are industry conversation starters. So for example, people don't think that security is very useful in manufacturing. And this is going to tell you far more about my TV watching habits than I would like for you to know. But I was watching an episode of Forensic Files on TV, and the security team had a member who went rogue. And basically what they did was, this was in the days of reel-to-reel security backups. So this was a while ago, but it's still relevant today. What they did was they built a software bomb. So a software bomb is not like a pipe bomb where it just, explodes and does a lot of physical damage. A software bomb is set up into the network so that it's triggered with a specific password and user combination on a specific date. So they set up this software bomb in order to delete the entire manufacturing instructions from the whole network of the plant, because this particular plant only used machines. I believe it was a stitching plant where they had particular patterns into their sewing machines. And so this deleted all of the instructions that they had. And then the rogue member, of course, took the reel-to-reel backup tape, so they had nothing. It completely took this plant out of operation for weeks. Nowadays, we're not on reel-to-reel backup, but you can still have problems like this software bomb in your network, and having Ansible automation in your system to push out the playbooks that you need will be a better solution than just letting a rogue member of a software team take you down. And so now I'm going to introduce my friend Jerry. He is our brand leader, and he's going to help me talk about the rest of these industry conversation starters. Jerry, if you want to take it away.
Hey, yeah, excited to be here. So I'm going to touch on the remainder here and just add a little tidbit here because we're here to discuss security and how Ansible can help with that use case. And these industry conversation starters are great for Ansible overall, but I want to pick out some specific SIM use cases or QRadar use cases, right? In follow up from our last conversation last week. So I want to call out some specific security SIM use cases and how Ansible plays into that. So for financial services, there's quite a few use cases when it comes to SIM, but I'll pick on a couple. Insider threats, for example. Detecting users and changing their privilege levels, right? That's an issue. If somebody's not supposed to have access to certain things and there is changes going on in the background, that kind of feeds into Felicia's story, right? With that rogue person on the team getting access that they necessarily shouldn't. If you have Ansible deployed, Ansible playbooks can kind of mediate and level the playing field of what users are supposed to have access to what, and when it notices changes going on at that user level, it can deploy a sales playbook to cancel that out and not allow that to go through. Data exfiltration, detecting unnatural network activities. Felicia spoke to a self-remedying network, right? Seeing large number of files being transferred around. When it picks up on that, again, Ansible can identify that large transfer going on and deploy a playbook to then cut that out immediately. Moving on to public sector government, that's an interesting one, right? Because in the public sector, you have big investments in public cloud, where a lot of these groups were and are still living on tape, right? In old infrastructure. So as they move into this public cloud, they're very worried about security. And they're deploying these SIMs to then protect and identify these certain security issues that are going on. Also, saving money and meeting budget is huge in public sector. And one way to do that with a SIM already involved, or if you are deploying a SIM and that's part of your sales motion to them, is having Ansible to cut down on the IT errors that go on within their groups, human errors, which we are all guilty of, but also saving them money, because as Felicia spoke to the beginning, not everybody is going to pick up on every security risk. And if you have Ansible and playbooks deployed to identify some of the most common risks, it will automatically self-remedy and self-heal that situation. Retail is one of my favorite ones because it talks about IoT. And in my previous role, coming from our IBM side, I'm in love with IoT. So anything that has to do with sensors, EAMs, picking up on those and grabbing the data. This one's interesting because IoT devices were not designed with security in mind. Think about how many edge devices are out there in the world, especially in retail. So you have thousands of devices out there, let's say, even 100. How do you keep track? How are companies keeping track of that? How are they keeping track of the security behind those devices? And how are they protecting them, right? And keeping them up to date through patching. So QRadar gets implemented into retail for IoT devices, for their IoT devices, for a couple reasons. Identifying DOS attacks, denial of service, right? IoT vulnerability and management. How do you keep those protected? And what happens when a device is compromised? Well, Ansible plays very well with with QRadar to solve this because, again, self-remedying, right, in mind. It's a common theme here. Deploying the security measure through playbooks to protect, patch, and secure these devices. Otherwise than that, when a IoT device goes on, maybe it's number 223 device, edge device, you have to reach out specifically to that device and see what's going on. That takes time out of the IT group's day. There's also, again, that human error element when that device is compromised or goes down, imagine Ansible picking up on that immediately and patching it and playing or sending specific playbooks to that device to see, is it a patching issue? Is there a DOS situation going on? Or maybe it just went down, right, because it's traditional hardware. Next slide. Healthcare is another good one. So HIPAA, right, is probably as a tight of a regulation as they deal with in the financial services with Sarbanes-Oxley. HIPAA requires risk analysis, risk management. So SIMS and QRadar is getting deployed in these situations to handle quite a number of things, but I'll just touch on audit control and access control, right? For audit control, how do you monitor the change to policy within an IT group? For access control, how do you monitor the change to credentials and permissions, right? We kind of talked to one of the credentials and permissions in the financial services piece, but for audit control, being able to push a uniform policy within an IT organization and across, right, without having to kind of pick and choose where it's going to do, and then maybe you hit this specific infrastructure, and then you move on to this one after you've done that one successfully. Having Ansible be a common language across your IT infrastructure to push that uniform policy saves a lot of time, saves a lot of money, and it's done right the first time. Access control, pushing a uniform user policy so that a user can't go rogue. You've heard that a couple times here, right? So back to Felicia's example, keep making sure that users can't just go in, change things, grab data, grab patient data. Could you imagine, right? There's tons of lawsuits going on in the retail world, in the healthcare world, because this data gets exposed. If you have Ansible that can, again, be that common language, deploy secure playbooks to make sure that everything stays in line, it cuts down on a lot of that human error risk. So it was a pleasure being here. I'm going to pass it back to Felicia. I would implore you, partners out there, if you have any questions about these things, and these industries are some of your focus areas, work with my team, work with me. Would love to talk with you, do a one-on-one session with you to talk about some of these things and go more in depth. Thanks, Felicia.
Thanks, Jerry. So now we're going to move on and talk about our target audiences. So target audiences typically for an Ansible play in all general Ansible is either going to be the person at the top or it's going to be the development leader. So we're going to focus more on the person at the top because we are doing a security focus, and this is the person who's got the most security concerns. I mean, obviously that they need to ensure the data security and management and meet compliance standards. They've got to, be able to talk to their teams and dedicate where the security is going to go. They also need to be able to talk to their customers and ensure that the security is where it's supposed to be. So that's where we're focusing on. So we want, C-suite, CIOs, CTOs, we want a VP or director of IT or director of infrastructure. And what we really want is someone who's going to see value in efficiency, but also efficiency in security. We want them to, enable continuous integration and deployment of applications, yes, but see the value in making sure that their security environment is continuous and able to run on its own towards the self-healing infrastructure that we talked about. So we have this here, and there are 3 different objectives that we try to approach this with the IT ops leaders. So for operational efficiency, remember that 57% more time to respond with a 65% increase in severity means that you've got more downtime, more complaints, bigger holes in your network, and a lot more responsibility in trying to catch up and a lot more to answer for. When we go to improved cost savings, I think that speaks for itself, but I just wanted to call out this particular fact. Atlanta's ransomware attack, I'm sure you all are familiar with the fact that Atlanta was locked out and held for ransomware a couple years ago, is estimated to cost $17 million to remediate. And I don't know about you, but I don't have $17 million in my pocket to fix a hole that I wasn't able to patch in time. And then, of course, objective number 3 is one we really want our eye on. So, excuse me. So we want to reduce the recovery time following security incidents and maintain our role-based access control, yes, but we want to reduce human error. Human error accounts for the majority of mistakes that are made in the security network. And if we can just take a few more hands off of it and automate a few more processes, we can reduce that human error component. So our strategic imperatives that we're going for, of course, are operational efficiency, resource optimization, business innovation, and customer experience. So, of course, with operational efficiency, we want to eliminate the rising IT complexity, which creates risks for businesses. So that's a lot of fancy jargon speak for we want to make it easier and make it safer. So for resource optimization, as I mentioned before, most human error, most data breaches are caused by human error. And I went online and I did some research, and I'm sure you've heard of a company called KnowBe4, but KnowBe4 collects statistics on and trains people to avoid human error in cybersecurity. So I went to their research page, and last year, 90% of all data breaches in the UK were caused by human error. So that's something that we want to eliminate. Why does this fall under resource optimization? Because your people are your resources. You know, just as much as your hardware is. And so we want to reduce that by making some of these tasks automated to keep people's fingers out of places where they shouldn't be. Then with business innovation, like, shouldn't the security team be able to find your gaps and close them? 5%, like I mentioned before, is a small number to bank on as far as your network goes. Shouldn't you want to find 95% of your gaps instead of missing 95% of them? And then, of course, customer experience, where customers are constantly demanding a better experience with your software, with your company, and they don't want to hear, I'm sorry, we're down today because we had a security incident. So we want Ansible to automate this so that they can find these security incidents before they become an incident. So I've got a few highlight slides here that I'm not going to go over. These are just reference slides for you. I'm going to make this deck available to all of you after the presentation, but they go over in more detail what we just talked about. And then I'd like to point out that we have our Tech Data Field Resource Team. There's myself, then there's Brandon and David, who are our BDEs, Marshall, who is my counterpoint, and then Jerry, who you just heard from not too long ago, who is our brand leader. I've also got some links listed for you. The GitHub repositories, Ansible Galaxy, and then of course the Ansible website. Please, please, please go and check them out, particularly Ansible Galaxy. There is so much helpful information out there for you. You don't have to build your own playbooks from scratch. The community is always busily innovating, and since it's open source, you can take those playbooks and integrate them into your own networks. And then thank you. If you have any questions or comments, or you want to hear some more about it, or you want to talk about something else Red Hat related, shoot me an email at felicia.ward@techdata.com, or you can email my team box at redhat@techdata.com. So right now I'm going to stop the share and open it up for questions. So give me just a moment here. Oh, there we go. All right, and let's see if we have any questions. Go ahead and pop them into the chat. Okay. It doesn't look like I've got any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.